everyone, and welcome to the Advancing Immersive Audio panel today. It's so lovely to see you all at InfoComm again, just real quick on that. So nice to be in the space with you guys. We're just going to run through the line here of quick introductions, starting with Melissa.
Hi, my name is Melissa Price, and I'm the head of commercial business development for Spatial.
My name is Kristin Bidwell. I'm a senior design consultant at ACT Associates.
Rebecca Sullins, senior design engineer for Claire Global Integration.
And Natalia Szczepanczyk, I'm a senior acoustic consultant at HOLOPLOT.
And this is our panel, so we're just going to get right into it today. If you have questions, please use the QR code. So our first question for you all, how is immersive audio impacting markets that you never expected?
I guess I'll jump into it being the first in line here. I think, as I think about it from Spatial's perspective, we've had audio playing a major role in healthcare over the past several years. It's something that we've known has been very important to health and healing and wellness. And now with immersive audio, we can really bring an impact to those environments in a meaningful way with some of the deployments that we have.
I also think in the corporate world, there's something that we're sometimes missing. If you think about having an outdoor space where you meet with your clients or you just have events outside in the evenings, not everyone is socially inept in a company, and sometimes they can be very uncomfortable. And I think sound has, like you said, in healthcare, a psychological effect to make you more comfortable. And I think adding immersive audio to those types of spaces can really be a lot more inviting for clients than other employees.
I'll mention two briefly. Number one is retail. Again, just because you're making people more comfortable, and when people are more comfortable, they're more likely to stay longer and spend more money, right? That's a big one that we're seeing a lot. And the other one is in live production. You don't think of live production as being immersive because you're trying to focus on a stage. There's a couple of shows here even that are trying to put immersive audio into the audience so that you really get that full effect, which is a really cool feature.
And I think it's interesting to kind of think of how it will move into becoming more and more natural sounding and kind of replicating the natural environment in order for it to be more subtle, natural, and kind of less in your face, in your ear, and less obstructive essentially.
So you all think it's a very additive experience for anyone who's been able to be exposed to an immersive audio system. Do you mind talking more about that?
Go ahead. Jump in there. Sorry, repeat that one more time.
Oh, how it's an additive experience with immersive audio included.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's not just a technology. Like we have it, obviously, a lot of live sound is using it and a lot of experiential environments to kind of feature. But it's a huge psychological effect, and music is so powerful and sound is so powerful that it can be really used to help people.
Yeah, I'll 100% agree with that. I come from a live theater background, go Pickles, and oh, crap, we have another one. And for me, it's the difference between watching something on a TV, a two-dimensional flat thing, and going to a theater and being really involved in the whole situation. It's the difference between a flat picture and a 3D perspective for your ears, right? It really just involves you.
I think I can add to this from the technology point of view. We're really seeing how we can really manipulate sound and control sound in completely new ways. That's something we do at HOLOPLOT daily. It brings this kind of new dimension to the control of sound. So no longer it's just a surround sound. You actually can manipulate the sound in terms of the distance. You can bring something really close to you, or then take it really far away. So, for example, if there was a mosquito flying around here, I would hear it, but you wouldn't. Can we replicate this? And yes, we can. This is super exciting, I think.
So going back to like the markets that you guys weren't expecting, how is technology, you think, evolving to better suit markets it's already in and suit markets it's expanding into?
So as I think about that from Spatial's perspective, when you're thinking about deploying across multiple sites, multiple locations, in a traditional experience, it's been, you're programming directly to that speaker, to that location, zoning. Now we've taken that and made it a software problem.
Right.
And so that software layer now allows you to truly be able to make changes on the fly. You're able then at that point as well to really, I think, deploy different sizes. So maybe create something within your own small studio and, you know, a 10 by 10 room, but then deploy that across multiple, you know, acres in some of our experiences. So it's a software solution now.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about deploying it to other locations. I think it can also be used in a lot of hybrid work situations, even at home, where you have multiple people on a screen, or in the office and you have multiple people on the screen, where that audio can sense where those people are, and it's not just one channel coming at you. It can actually become more realistic that you're in the space.
Yeah, for me, it's literally just when you were trying to do immersive audio or something, you know, 20 years ago, it was a guy on a mixing board plugging into analog machinery that had to sit there and control that the whole time, right? And it's like everybody says, the robots are taking our jobs. Now you can program that into a computer, into a DSP, and you can deploy that for what, $2,000 to get a little DSP, do a little custom programming, and you're done. As opposed to having to pay a very highly trained engineer to do it in real time. So technology is literally just making all of this easier.
Absolutely, and the kind of processing power that we are, you know, we have available in our hands right now, this was impossible simply before.
I can do things on my phone that I couldn't do with a mixing console 15 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And Natalia, you offer such a unique perspective from the manufacturer side. How is that impacting everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting for us to, we're actually exploring with our product. We're also learning, because it's kind of a way of experiencing reproduced sound that hasn't been done necessarily before. And it's new, actually. It's kind of, it takes a bit of time to actually get used to the fact that you can have this supernatural sounding, essentially we're synthesizing wavefronts, right? So this is the wavefield synthesis technology, which has been around for a long time, but this is the first time where it's actually implemented. You can just get the product and actually use it now. It was not possible before.
Right. I think about, to that point, like sensors and like what are those inputs and outputs and time of day and everything else that can now play a factor, and how are you going to be able to program spaces, you know, really that will be able to live on, because it is, the hardware is already there, it's already designed for it, and it becomes very much an evergreen situation where it can just change and evolve over time, which is great.
Yeah, and I think in terms of also integration, I think it's interesting to think of we're trying to hide the technology, which is actually really, I think personally, really a great thing, because we want people to just experience the experience rather than think of the tech that they see. So I don't know what's your experience with this, but majority of our projects, the speakers are hidden. I hate that because I love looking at them, but most people don't want to see them. And I think for a visitor of a immersive experience, that's a wonderful next level that you can just focus on the experience.
Absolutely. And I love that there's this dance between the software side of immersive audio and the manufacturing actual equipment side, and then on top of that, designing all of it. So from all of your perspectives, what are the biggest design principles or maybe challenges that you have to face when using immersive audio?
Yeah, I think if you think of a performing arts center and you have left, center, right, sub, that's pretty straightforward. In a cinema, if you have 5.1, that's still pretty straightforward. Now you have 50.10. And that can cause a lot of phase issues. It can cause a ton of electrical issues. It can cause a ton of acoustical issues. So I think really understanding, or having a speaker system or a model that's similar in frequency response and phase is extremely important. Understanding acoustics, I think, is more important than ever, because putting 60 speakers into a system is insane. And tuning those correctly, you know, having them set at the right levels for their purpose. So in an immersive experience like that, you know, one speaker could just be a cowbell, and that's all it does. And understanding, okay, how loud does that need to be, and how is it going to affect everything else in the room? So going into design, it's kind of new as far as like from an audiovisual consultant standpoint on designing these things. There's no hard set rules on you have to do it this way, because every space is different and everyone is using it in a different way for different reasons. But I think, yeah, acoustics, phase issues, power are three big factors.
Oh, really?
I want to build on that just a little bit and say that tying all of this into the way humans perceive audio is absolutely imperative. One of the biggest things that I learned doing theatrical sound design is, for example, rain. Where do you hear rain? You hear it when it hits the ground, right? But no human on the planet wants to hear rain hitting the ground. They don't understand it from a spatial perspective unless you put it up high, because that's where your brain wants rain to be, right? So you still have to take in those sort of human limitations when you're working with the acoustics, when you're tuning things, when you're designing this stuff, which adds a whole nother element to over top of the technology itself.
And I think about that from a software layer, right? Because you walk into a built environment, and you know, my background's commercial interiors and design. And you walk into a built environment, and in that space, you might have some constraints. You might have a full window wall. You might have, you know, an art piece in a lobby that you can't work around, and you can't put a speaker in the middle of it, right? So when you think about immersive audio, when you start to solve that as
one of the biggest challenges that I see retrofitting, especially old buildings, is are the buildings that were designed to be acoustically natural from the get-go, right? They were designed not to want reinforcement, not to want anything, and that may be the materials, it may be the shape of the building, it may be whatever. And so as soon as you introduce unnatural or technologically enhanced audio, those buildings can become an issue, and you'll lose some of that power because everything is reflecting like it's supposed to architecturally, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we also work with, instead of introducing another, let's say, loudspeaker into the system, we actually kind of work with those steered beams, and we work with the architectural elements which are already in the place, so we can actually bounce sound off the walls, off the ceiling, in a very precise way, so it doesn't excite the room too much, but basically there's no need for another rig in the place, right? So it's kind of, this could be a challenge, of course, but it could also be a great opportunity actually in the space where you cannot simply install as many point sources as you'd like.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that is a value of immersive audio is you can change the scale and the shape of a room, right? So you can walk into a space that is your traditional four walls, smaller type conference room, but create expansiveness depending upon, you know, the scene that you're playing and the experience you're trying to create. And in the reverse, you know, in the workplace today that we're challenged with of not everyone returning to the office at the same time or in the space at the same time, you can create a sense of density through that as well. So it really does allow you to create some very interesting experiences, you know, in a very, you know, functional way of, you know, drawing, you know, team members back in and making them feel like safe and cozy and experiencing the space. But also, you know, sometimes the place feels too confined and you need it to be a little bit bigger.
And so that was kind of touching more on like the hardware, physical aspects that can be challenges or, you know, really big rewards from a software perspective. What do you think are the biggest challenges ahead of immersive audio?
Ahead, I'm not so sure, right? I think we're trying to design so that because those software layers, you get an update and you're able to move forward and to be able to always be evolving. What I hear constantly, and again, going back to I'm commercial interiors and design, what I'm hearing constantly in our demos is like, well, how is this zoned, right? Those zone words seems to be like this constant thing that comes up. And I was like, you can change your zone by the minute if you want. Because it's a software solution now, you can, you know, virtualize speakers within the space, and for so many people, it's getting over that traditional hurdle. I have to have a home run to every speaker, but I don't have to create zones anymore. I can do that through the application.
Right. And Kristin and Rebecca, you guys are working on the design engineering front of it all. What do you guys see as the biggest coordination maybe challenges?
I'm going to go with the exact same problem that we have with every new technology, is as soon as it becomes commonplace, everybody wants it and everybody thinks that they can do it on the cheap.
Yes.
And that's going to go back to, you need to manage people's expectations. If you want a true immersive audio system, then you need to do it the right way, right? You need to have the right software, you need to have the right hardware, you need to have your space helping that situation. And I think that's going to be a big one for a while. You know, everybody wanted a flat panel TV when they came out, but they were $10,000. The technology caught up eventually, but it always takes some time to get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because it's so new and it's such a open playing field right now that I can see installations going horribly wrong quickly, since there's no, you know, this is how it works, this is how you do it in every space or whatever. There's no standard really. So I can see a lot of phase issues, and even if, you know, you zone in on things, great, but maybe not everyone will, and I can just see an acoustic nightmare. So really hiring somebody that's well versed in this and has done it before, I think, is incredibly important.
And how often are you running into systems where you have an immersive system, but then you also still need like a normal PA for a space? So how is coordination going for that in the future and trying to implement them to be together?
I mean, I think about it no different than any other input and output, right? We're living in a digital age where you're able to get inputs and outputs at, you know, on our watches, on our rings, like you can get information everywhere. And so I think it's just about, you know, how does the system configure to receive those inputs and layer that on?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I come from theater, that's my whole life. You know, I mean, you always have the main PA because you want to focus to the speaker, right? The talker, excuse me. But you also, you know, you're hiding speakers in every nook, cranny, chair. A toaster once, I did that. You know, it's the same concept. You just have to control what you're putting where, why you're putting it there, and go on.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Brandon Watson has sent us a great question, wherever you might be, saying, how much of an impediment is it that we are often working with 2 mixes and not multi-channel mixes? Are we going to be fighting an uphill and losing battle by trying to take these old ideas that have to be upmixed to create an immersive audio experience? It's a good question.
I'm going to go with yes. Yes, that is a good question. But I will say we need to address this as we do every sort of new technology. You can't, it's crap in, crap out, right? You can't take your old I love it. You cannot take your old 2-channel mixes, put it through some fancy speakers, and expect it to have the same effect as if you had designed the input to do that in the first place. And you need to start from the beginning. You need to have the right inputs, you need to have the right sound design. That is a thing, and you really need to design your source material to play to the end game, right? You can have all the 8K TVs you want in the world, but until there's 8K content everywhere, not doing much, right? It's the same thing here. You need to create your content to fit the functional space.
Awesome. Well, that is our panel time. It went by very quickly. Thank you guys again, Natalia, Rebecca, Kristin, and Melissa. And one round of applause to these lovely ladies. Excellent. Oh, anytime, anytime. I don't think we have walk-off.